Let me see who was here from this morning to right this minute. Wow. So I want Amelia to be able to see that. So I want the photographer to take a picture of that just so she knows just how much energy has been generated by her vision and her insight and her hard work. So let's give Amelia a round of applause. I'm going to come back to Amelia in a minute. Once again, thank everyone who made this possible. Of course, the Hertie Foundation, the venue here. This was a beautiful space and nicely appointed, just exactly what we need. Of course, thanks to the speakers, to the workshop facilitators, to all of you who attended and contributed and importantly stayed. If I could think of a metaphor for what happened, it's like Amelia is an architect, and she built, she laid out a beautiful building and actually laid the foundation for it. And you all came in and just set it all up. You decorated the rooms, you put the furniture in, you figured out the ways to come up, the ways to end. This was exactly what I think she would have wanted. Know that the work that you did, the time that you spent, the thoughts that you put together, the courageous conversations you had, they will all be part of how the center will be moving forward, and you will all be part of that conversation. There are a few more things that I think really I want to spend a little bit of time rather than just saying thanks. I want to thank the marvelous moderator, Sumi Cho. Now, let me just point out the role that Sumi played in making this a conversation that we were all deeply invested in the middle of, lifted by. I know you all have gone to conferences before and sat through things that were meant to be a round table, and the only thing the moderator did was read the entire bio that you could have read yourself. And just let the conversation go anywhere. It wasn't a round table at all. And I know you've seen panels where it's just, okay, here's the title of the panel, go at it. I think what we saw today is a conductor who helped build the track for the conversation, put the fuel in the engine, drove us to where we needed to go and told us when to get off. It was a marvelous framing of our conversation and interrogation that I think brought all of the potential directly into fruition, and it was something that was done at the very last minute. So, Sumi, marvelous. Thank you, as always. It's just been a pleasure to spend the day with you. I also want to thank the two superwomen who jumped in and just pulled this off, arriving with the cape on the back that said super interns, and just did amazing work. Najwa and Lily, thank you all, you both so much for just amazing, amazing work. Now, I want to tell you just a quick thing that Najwa shared with me, partly because it responds to one of the conversations that had happened earlier in this conversation. She shared her journey of having met Amelia at a panel at Sciences Po. And I got to tell you something about that panel, because again, it's important. It was a panel over intersectionality, one in which the organizers initially told me that they couldn't find any women of color in France. True story, to participate on this panel. And I was like, I know someone, I can't believe you don't know that person. So Amelia was invited to participate in short order. It was not an easy conversation, as you can imagine. It was quite contested. I want to think that it was sort of, we were kind of tag teaming one another. But I have to confess, at a certain point, Amelia was on her own, because it was in French and there was no translation for me. So I could tell that something was really going down because Amelia was giving it, and I could tell from the reaction of the audience, like, what she was actually saying, because, you know, there was, like, even in France, there was a sort of call and response, particularly among the women of color in the audience. And of course, I could see from the ashen faces of some of the other folks that much of what was being said wasn't quite on track with what people were expecting. The reason why I tell this story is it is an example of what it means to engage in institutional spaces that are not necessarily open to every aspect of what we do. And it's a story about how participating in these spaces allows us to take sometimes a little bit of capital in a bucket, discursive capital, space, the opportunity to participate, and pass it on to each other. That passing on that capital to Amelia, and Amelia taking that space to tell the truth, is directly what led to Najwa actually meeting her and working with her. So it's just not the case that there's either we're inside or outside. It's just not the case that we choose to either participate and give it all up or stand outside and be true to our values. This is discursive contestation in every space. And sometimes that discursive contestation is what allows us to see each other, to recognize each other, and to build community with each other. So thank you so much for following up with Amelia. Thank you so much for making clear that these opportunities are what allow us to build these networks and to advance the work of intersectionality. And last but not least, Amelia. You know, so she'd been writing me, talking about this idea, and I was like, yeah, great idea. It'll take about 5 years for it to happen. Then she called and said, I'm coming over to London. We're going to have dinner. We're going to talk about it. Like, okay, we're going to talk about. I mean, she had a whole plan, like, in a couple of months. Like, who does this? Who is able? I told you this morning, I thought about it for like 2 decades before I even tried to do anything about this. And she was able to do it within less than a year. This tells you about the kind of person who Amelia is, her ability to gather this distinguished group of people, her vision about what needed to be part of the conversation, her sense about what questions needed to be asked, and her faith that people would come when the table is set. So I would like to ask all of us at this point to stand up, to give Amelia an image of what this meant for us, and I thank you all for participating in it.